Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in today. I am Nicole Forbes with Dennis's 70s, and today we're talking about moonlight gardens or night gardens. And this is really this is a little bit of a different class than often we teach. There's not a lot to educate you about when it comes to night gardens or moonlight gardens. It's really a design concept that I think is just a lot of fun to consider and even just to think about adding some of these plant elements to your gardens at home to increase the visibility of some certain sections or plants after dark. Now, here we are in Portland, Oregon, and today is a lovely, showery summer, well, late spring, I guess, day. So we have a little bit of gray and overcast, which is slightly typical for our pocket of the world. And so even during the day, there are, kind of overcast or dark conditions in many parts of the year where the same kind of principles will bring these plants to kind of focus or feature in your garden. They shine and shimmer without a lot of light, simply by kind of their nature. And so it also just so happens that today is the full moon of May. It is also a super moon, which I think is, one of the kind of fun and exciting things that we talk about and know about the lunar phase. So the moon is closer or appears closer it appears larger because it's closer to the earth. It's also referred to as a blood moon, this cycle of the moon's phase, and we are in parts of the world experiencing a lunar eclipse, or a partial lunar eclipse, I believe. So a lot of moon talk and moon events going on, and I just like to think that we chose this particular topic months ago, but the stars aligned as they do. So with that being said, there is a blog or like article that goes along with this class that lists out a lot of the plants that I will be showcasing and talking about during the discussion today. So you can make reference to that. It's just a link right in the description of this video. And if you have any issues finding it, just let us know in comments and we will reply. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to comment and we'll reply after the class. So as I mentioned, and as you'll see kind of on the handout, really we are talking about white flowers or pale pink or even kind of a pale yellow flower. Those, even pale lavender. So light colored flowers are the blooms that show up the most in the dimmer light or during the dark hours, and not so much the, real saturated purples and blues and reds. They tend to kind of disappear after the sun goes down. So considering the contrasts that you offer, or adding some kind of pops of whites or golds into your garden can really highlight even other features as they sort of disappear as the light fades. We have here kind of a blend of variegated plants. Now, variegated plants are plants that have foliage with two tones at least, so multi-toned. Variegation can be on the outer edge of the leaf, like we see on this variegated boxwood, so a little bit of a creamy edge with a green center. We have a similar variegation on this Patriot Hosta, which shows that beautiful green center of the leaf with a creamy, almost crisp white. So it fades from the new leaf is more of a creamy, the older foliage variegation is a nice, crisp, clean white. So variegation can be lines or kind of a linear tone, but we also have variegation here on this variegated dappled willow. So this is, this little willow is on a standard, so it looks like a tiny tree, but the foliage that comes out starts pink and then is like a pure white before it takes on a little bit of a speckled green coloration as it matures. There's not crisp lines. The variegation is just sort of random and speckled on the plant. And similar to that, another speckled variegation that includes almost white is this euonymus. And this is a low growing evergreen kind of shrub or ground cover euonymus harlequin. And the new growth on harlequin again is just pure white, and then it develops some streaking and splotching to get a more interesting variegation pattern. So the non-white variegation would include golds, and gold or yellow or gold variegation is another one that really shows up well in the dark. Here I'm showing Sienothus Diamond Heights, which is a great ground cover or addition to containers or pots because it kind of spills over the side. Full hot sun and evergreen, but a little on the tender side for the Sienothus Diamond Heights. And then this is a absolutely lovely but underused shrub. This is Elly Agnes olive Martini, also known as a Russian olive. And I'm not sure how well the kind of sparkly, shiny foliage shows up in the camera, but each leaf is covered with kind of a layer of scales, almost like fish scales, that gives it a shimmer and a sheen. And if you look even on the back sides of the leaves, they are just as brilliantly colored in kind of a silver, again, scaly shimmer. So we have that golden variegation on the edges of these leaves and that solid kind of silver on the undersides. Olive Martini, as far as an Elly Agnes goes, is a really sturdy evergreen shrub, grows in full sun or partial sun. It is pretty fast growing and up to about 8 feet tall and wide, so a big plant, great for screening, drought tolerant. And this plant has a fragrant flower in the fall that is kind of inconspicuous and not very noticeable in the plant, but really wonderfully fragrant, kind of a musky, spicy fragrance. It also develops some thorns. So it is a plant that can create a privacy hedge, even somewhat of a, barrier to stop kids and animals and even people from walking through the foliage as well, or, through the hedge. Elly Agnes olive Martini, fantastic for that kind of shimmery foliage. And those little scales, as I mentioned, actually help the plant be extremely drought tolerant. Now, we don't often think of, there are certain plants we don't think of as variegated, but one of my favorite variegated plants in my garden is actually a lavender. And this lavender is an English lavender variety called Platinum Blonde. And Platinum Blonde has sort of a golden tip. Again, the new growth is the brightest coloration. It has just as much wonderful fragrance as most lavenders and is budded up here to have that beautiful purple lavender flower. It's a good sized lavender. Again, mine at home are between 2 and 3 feet tall and wide, blooms at least twice a year, and as most lavender, it's evergreen. So lavender, if not Platinum Blonde, most lavender is still a silver gray or a blue gray in color. And that group of foliage colors is another whole range that do wonders in the moonlight and shimmer as the light fades. And so we see from that blue gray color, as I mentioned, lavender, we have lamb's ears, which is one of, I think, kind of our favorites from childhood. Lamb's ears is soft and like a lamb's ear, so petable and soft. This is wet because it's raining outside, so it's lost a little bit of its silver sheen, but you can see even how fuzzy and white the stem is on lamb's ears. So a wonderful, shiny, kind of silvery gray, holds the water droplets on it as well, so it looks real pretty in all the weather conditions. And another real silvery plant that is also very soft and petable. This is Artemisia silver mound. So Artemisia silver mound is again just like a silver gray, soft, low growing, kind of mounding perennial, very sturdy, very tough, but best in full sun. So these really wonderful foliage accents can provide, again, a place for light to really kind of bounce off of to highlight after the light fades in your garden. One that is extremely dramatic is this Senecio angel's wings. So if you look, there's a similarity between the lamb's ears and the angel's wings, only more extreme of the silvers and whites on angel's wings than you see on lamb's ears. Senecio angel's wings is a tender perennial. This is one that's hardy to zone 8, so we're just a little bit below its kind of total comfort range, but with a little protection from really wet weather conditions in the winter. Great in containers, again, up on the deck or, a place where you've got it a little bit protected. Does best in full sun, and again, is evergreen with protection during winter. Absolutely gorgeous in mixed container plantings or to highlight, again, a border or a feature in your garden. Senecio angel's wings. Now there's white flowers, and again, those are kind of no-brainers. That's the part that makes a lot of sense to people when they're putting together a moonlight garden or a night garden. But not all white flowers, are created equal, I suppose. Some plants have longer blooms, longer bloom seasons, which I think, again, makes them a better investment to go into your garden for that, duration of color and excitement. One of the longest blooming perennials that I've talked about before in a couple of different classes, and is this gorgeous kind of pale pink, almost white, is a Hearty Fuchsia. So this is a Hearty Fuchsia, which means that it survives from year after year in the ground in our zone, so zone 7B according to USDA. And this is Hawk's Head. Hawk's Head Hearty Fuchsia we talked about in our hummingbird class last week, because most fuchsias are loved by hummingbirds, but this one happens to be this kind of single color monochromatic bloom, and a plant that can get up to at least 3 feet tall and wide. Blooms usually from May, as we are now, through October. So you have a long season of color, and as this plant gets bigger, it's just covered with these little dainty kind of drooping flowers through the whole summer and into fall. Now, from the dainty to the kind of large, just classic daisy, Shasta Daisies. And Shasta Daisies come in so many different heights and kind of styles. You'll see the most classic and traditional, this is Snowcap, which is kind of a dwarf form, but that real classic single daisy with the yellow center. But there's taller versions of Shasta Daisy. There are doubles, big frilly double flowers where you don't see that yellow center, and some that are in kind of a pale yellow or kind of butter yellow color. And those also, of course, are gorgeous in the lower light conditions. Next door to our Shasta Daisy is Yarrow. Now Yarrow is, this is new vintage white. So Yarrow is another one of those really workhorse perennials. They take full or partial sun. They are drought tolerant. They attract butterflies and are fairly long blooming. They also make a great cut flower. This, as I said, new vintage white is a kind of shorter plant in general, and comparing that to one of the taller yarrows that, of course, is named appropriately. This is Yarrow Moonshine. So yarrows do have a little bit of a silvery gray leaf in the first place, but Moonshine, you can see that these two yarrows have slightly different leaves, kind of coarser, more ferny or feathery leaf on Moonshine, with more silvers and grays. And then on the new vintage white, we have a finer textured feathery foliage that's in a deeper green. And you can see these really great domes. These flat top dome flowers of moonshine are just that beautiful golden yellow that also really picks up in low light and just kind of shimmers at the top of the plant. The moonshine yarrow and new vintage white yarrow, again, are easy care perennials, so great for almost any garden. Best in the ground, but they can grow fine in containers. One that's not quite, well, a couple that aren't quite in bloom yet. Another real classic, this is baby's breath. Now, Gypsophila or baby's breath has that spray of tiny white flowers in sort of a long, airy spray. We know them in bouquets. It's kind of a classic addition to a rose bouquet. But baby's breath has this, again, bluish gray foliage that shines or shimmers in low light, and then that beautiful button and airy style of foamy white flower that also adds to that kind of just whimsy in your garden and airiness. This is a hardy perennial that won't be blooming until later summer. This is a hardy hibiscus. And this variety of hardy hibiscus, which one is this one? Oh, it's just called white with a red eye. Very creative naming there. But you can see close in the image that they're giving us, the flower is a kind of gorgeous white hibiscus bloom, big dish-shaped flower with a white center. Now, when I say big, I mean big. Hardy hibiscus flowers are like the size of my head. So we'll revisit them later in the summer when we do a class on late bloomers. But they're really exciting in the sense that they don't look like something that should live here. But they really do. So they are hardy to what zone? They're hardy to negative 20 degrees. I mean, I'm not hardy to negative 20 degrees. So these are super tough plants. The trick with hardy hibiscus is they don't wake up until like now. They've just kind of emerged from the garden. They break dormancy in May. So a lot of other perennials wake up and start to come out of the ground by end of March, early April. At least you see signs of growth there. The hardy hibiscus, because its kind of whole world is shifted towards late summer, blooms into fall, it sleeps in. It sleeps in the spring, and it doesn't wake up until it's nice and warm and it's ready to just kind of jump out of the dirt. And what that does, at least to me, is it made me doubt its hardiness the first spring after I had planted it. When all of the other plants in my garden were starting to show signs of life, there was a big empty hole in the ground, where, not hole, literal hole, but a vacant space in my garden where this plant should have been. And I almost dug it up, but I got too busy and carried away with other projects. By the time I revisited that space in my garden, I realized that it had begun to grow, only it was just much later than the other plants. So word to the wise is mark the location of your hardy hibiscus if you plant it in the ground, so that you don't accidentally dig it up or fill in that spot while you're waiting for it to break dormancy in the spring. It will leave a little woody trunk. So it can be like as thick as my thumb or even a little bit thicker. As it grows over time, it will leave some kind of remainder of plant above ground. So you'll be able to spot that. 2 to 3 feet tall and 2 to 3 feet wide with, like I said, flowers as big as your face. They don't always come in this pure white with the red eye. There are some other colors, but of course the white flower worked well with our theme today. Another amazing white flower is hydrangeas. So if you're a shade gardener, the hardy hibiscus, for example, is best in full sun. If you're a shade gardener, you know that you rely on hydrangeas as kind of a go-to plant for a long season of bloom. Ease of care, they have very few pest and disease issues, and even that pale blue or a pale pink hydrangea really does kind of shimmer and show off in lower light conditions, overcast weather like today, or in the moonlight. Here I have the standard white hydrangea. So this is just Macrophylla white. And then I've also got, and they're just starting to bloom. So hydrangeas are just at the beginning of their flowering. But I brought in another really fun one that we don't see all the time. And this is an oak leaf hydrangea. So the flowers on the oak leaf hydrangea are in their like apple green phase. So they're just coming out of the bud. They are a little bit of a chartreuse or like the inside of a Granny Smith apple. And then they will turn to a pure white. And then they will fade to a kind of a mauve pink or a dusty pink. So as we know, most hydrangeas kind of change colors as they age on the plant. So that's the progression of flowers on the oak leaf hydrangea. This is a variety called Queen of Hearts, and you can see the leaf on an oak leaf hydrangea and how it kind of gets its name. Quite different and much more textured and dramatic leaf than our standard big leaf hydrangea like we have, most of us have in the shade. Now, oak leaf hydrangeas do great in filtered light or dappled sun, but they do tolerate a bit more sun than our standard big leaf hydrangeas that we think of more as shade. Where else have I got fun things on my table? Okay, conifers. Blue spruce, blue conifers are also, again, that perfect foliage color for kind of matching that blue-gray or blue-silver that I was talking about. But this is a really fun Chamaecyparis variety called Mauricii, and you can see these beautiful light-colored tips all over the plant. Mauricii is in the Hinoki family, but it's not a true or classic Hinoki. It's just Chamaecyparis obtusa. This is a relatively slow-growing plant, and it's going to top out at about 4 by 4 in like 10 years' time. It can take full sun or partial shade, and being that it is a conifer, it is evergreen through the winter. Grasses, can't go wrong with grasses for just, again, ease in landscape, low maintenance, adds texture and some kind of movement and airiness, sometimes height, depending on the varieties. So this is a miscanthus called Morning Light. It could easily just be called Moonlight, the same, but Morning Light is the name. Jakujima, sometimes you'll also see. Miscanthus Morning Light can get up to about 5 feet tall, 4 to 5 feet tall, kind of a nice clump over time, and has these really fine kind of white edges on a green blade, beautiful as it matures. Another grass that's more of the low and clumping style. So whereas Morning Light, kind of an accent grass towards the back of a bed, or great as kind of a screening for summer, this is Feather Falls, which is a carex. So Feather Falls is more of a mounding or lower growing grass that's better at the front of the border. Could be a nice edging grass, or an area where you need some sort of ground cover or low but fun kind of grassy texture. Feather Falls is also part sun to shade and another evergreen grass. So Morning Light is a deciduous winter dormant grass, turns kind of straw in the winter, whereas Feather Falls will stay like this through the winter as evergreen. More fun silver plants, fairly common, but a great perennial for shade. This is Brenera Jack Frost, also known as Siberian bugloss, I believe is the common name, but lots of us are getting sophisticated enough to use the term Brenera. You again just see that silver overlay on these gorgeous heart-shaped leaves. Now, Brenera Jack Frost has already bloomed this spring, but it has a really similar to forget-me-not flower, sky blue, tiny little sky blue flowers that are airy and kind of fun in there. Fragrant and blooming in my perimeters here, I have Star Jasmine, standard white evergreen vine with a delightful fragrance. is, for me, one of the kind of mainstays in my garden. Gives me that moonlight feature that I want, gives me fragrance, it's evergreen, it creates a screen while I'm on my deck, so it gives me privacy as well. And so I get a lot from my star jasmine, fragrance, evergreen, height, or, you know, vertical interest, as well as I mentioned, the moonlight. I have, what else? Oh, some annuals, which are fun to mention. And you'll see again annuals in your handout. The annuals range, I don't have a lot in flower right now, but there's the classic moonflower. I mean, that is about as classic of moonlight gardening as it gets. It is a vine. Moonflower is in the morning glory family, and usually you'll find that as something you can plant from seed, and pretty easy to grow from seed. In our area, it grows as an annual, so you would replant it every year. One other annual that is classic and old-fashioned, but really, again, has never gone out of style, and that is Sweet Alyssum. So this is a low-growing, kind of self-seeding annual. Often Sweet Alyssum will return year after year from its own seeds in your garden. It's wonderfully fragrant and just kind of smells fresh. It's, as I mentioned, a low mat grower, works in pots and containers, great as a bedding plant in the ground. And it is also highly beneficial to pollinators and butterflies. So it's attractive to a lot of good insects, which can lure in insects to your vegetable or edible garden to assist you with pollination. So always making sure that, you know, you're planting and even making your vegetable garden pretty. You have fringe benefits for making things pretty, which is usually that you're bringing in some pollinators or beneficial insects at the same time. Another fun annual, reaching to the front of the table, another fun annual for blooming usually after dark or being more fragrant after dark. This is Nicotiana. Now, there are a couple of different varieties of Nicotiana. This is just the standard domino mix, but there are taller, more night fragrant Nicotiana, kind of a longer trumpet style bloom, Nicotiana sylvestris, Nicotiana alata. Occasionally these are available at garden centers, but easy from seed. And they're another one that just self-sows in the garden and will spread around somewhat from year after year. So once you put them in 1 year, you'll usually have them return by seed for the future. I've got a gorgeous dogwood that is a little larger than I'm going to put in my hands and show the camera, but Becky's helping out here. This is Wolf Eyes dogwood. Now, Wolf Eyes is a variegated white flowering form of Cornus cousa. It is just past its bloom for the year, but you can see that gorgeous kind of spotty variegation. We have some green center and white edges, but really we also have kind of just a random flecking or speckling on the foliage. Wolf Eyes is a short tree, a small dogwood in general, 7 to 10 feet tall and wide, so easy to maintain in smaller gardens, best with morning sun and afternoon shade, or just in general kind of dappled light, filtered light. It can sunburn, and it will drop its leaves in the winter, but not before it gives you a second spectacular show of turning kind of pinks and fuchsia colors before the leaves fall off for the winter. So really dramatic fall color, gorgeous in the moonlight garden, a focal or feature tree, and a really manageable size for most gardens. So Wolf Eyes dogwood, everybody should have one. Next to Wolf Eyes, I also have something I almost forgot, and this is a really striking shade perennial. So this is Pulmonary Trevi fountain. Now, Pulmonaria's common name is lungwort. You can see why we all prefer the botanical names. Lungwort or Pulmonaria. Trevi fountain, I think I mentioned a couple of different ones in the handout. Great big leaf. I mean, this is like almost the size of a hosta leaf, larger than my hand, for example. It's kind of a fuzzy or furry, scratchy type texture with this splotchy, speckled variegation of silver white down the center of the leaf. It is also already flowered. It's a very, very early spring or even late winter bloomer with a beautiful blue flower that kind of color changes from blue to sort of a pale pink or a maroon. I'm not going to show you a picture because it doesn't really do justice. And as I mentioned, it's already finished flowering. But Pulmonary, great for shade and shade gardens. This is Daphne Eternal Fragrance, which is another one that is just starting to bloom. You can see these sweet little white star-shaped flowers at the ends of the branch tips. Now, of course, if smell-o-vision were a thing, you would also be able to smell how wonderfully fragrant this Daphne is. A lot of us think of the summer. I'm going to smell it right now. See? Smell-o-vision. This is the preview to smell-o-vision, watching me smell it. A lot of Daphne are, well, commonly we think of the most well-known and well-used Daphne as the Daphne Odora, the winter Daphne. That's a February bloomer. It's sort of a pale pink, almost white, more gold and green variegation on the plant. Does best in morning sun or afternoon shade. This Eternal Fragrance is a summer blooming Daphne. So wonderful fragrance, not quite as fragrant or intense as the winter Daphne, but still really lovely, lovely to smell. Tolerant of more sun than the winter Daphne is, and again, a little bit of a rounded shrub, semi-evergreen, 2 to 3 feet tall and wide. So really just another great plant to have in the garden, fragrant and easy care. And down here, it's again a little hard to lift up and showcase, but we do have just like a bouquet of flowers on this plant here, and I could not show this rose. This is one of our favorite roses at Dennis's 7Ds. It has also been an award-winning rose through the Portland's Best Rose, the People's Choice Award, all of that. It's highly fragrant, disease-resistant, a fabulous white rose, and it's called Sugar Moon. So it really had to be in this class, and you can see why. So Sugar Moon and roses in general, now is a great time to take a look at roses at the garden centers. But as we run through our rose inventory for the year, we will be reordering and receiving new roses in February of 2022, which means that if you wait too long and you miss out on Sugar Moon this year, you can buy it again very early season next year, right around Valentine's Day or by the end of February. I will also at this point remind everyone that Dennis 7Ds, if you're local and you can do curbside pickup, we have an online shopping site. So you could look at the handout or the list that accompanies this class and search for those plant names in our online shopping site to see if we've got them in our inventory. And even then, just with one more click, you can actually purchase them online. That site is www.shop.dennis7ds.com. We'll put a link in the comment section as well, just to make it easier on you. And if there's any other questions, please do add them in the comment section and we will reply to them later today. Becky's going to pan the table and get a close-up of some of these gorgeous plants. I wanted to turn off the lights and show you what these plants look like in the dark, but I'm in a room with no moon and no windows, and it really didn't work out. So not all my ideas pan out, but I thank you for watching today, and I hope you all have a great afternoon. Happy gardening.